Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet, Chapter 12, Jamaican Ginger. The year is 1942. When Keiko arrived outside the Black Elks Club, Henry immediately felt underdressed. Basically, he wore the same clothes he'd had on earlier in the day. The "I am Chinese" button still pinned to his school shirt. Keiko, though, had dressed for the occasion and had on a bright pink dress and shiny brown leather shoes. Her hair, which had been pulled back and bobbed with pins and hot rollers, now hung in swoopy curls to her shoulders. She wrapped herself in a white sweater she said her mother had knitted. Her sketchbook was tucked neatly beneath her arm. Dumbfounded, Henry said the first thing that came to his mind. "You look beautiful." He said it in English, watching Keiko beam, astonished at how different she looked, only vaguely resembling the silly, apron-wearing girl from the school kitchen. "No Japanese? No owai deki tu ureshi desu?" she teased. "I'm speechless." Keiko returned his smile. "Do we just go in?" "We can't." Henry shook his head and pointed to a sign that read, "No minors allowed after 6 p.m. They're serving booze. We're too young. But I've got an idea. Follow me." He pointed to the alley, where he and Keiko looped around, finding the back door. It was framed with thick glass blocks, but music emanated from the screen door, which was slightly ajar. "Are we sneaking in?" Keiko asked, concerned. Henry shook his head. "They're bound to see us and toss us." Instead, he scrounged up a pair of wooden milk crates, and they both sat down, listening to the music, ignoring the pungent smells of beer and mold in the alley. "I can't believe I'm here," Henry thought. The sun was still out, and the music was brisk and lively. After the first 15-minute set, the screen door creaked open, and an old black man stepped out to light a cigarette. Startled, Henry and Keiko jumped up to run. They were sure they would be shooed away for loitering. "What are you kids doing hanging out back here, trying to scare the bejesus out of this old man?" He patted his chest above his heart, then sat down where Henry had been sitting. The rumpled old man wore long trousers, held up by gray suspenders. Over a wrinkled button-down shirt, the sleeves rolled up. To Henry, he looked like an unmade bed. "Sorry," Keiko offered, flattening out the wrinkles in her dress. "We were just listening to the music. We were just about to leave." Henry interrupted. "Is Sheldon playing with the band tonight?" "Sheldon who? We got a lot of new faces in there tonight, son." "He plays the saxophone." The old man wiped his sweaty hands on his pants and lit his smoke. Hacking and coughing, he puffed away as if it were a competition. He was the losing team working towards a comeback. Henry listened as the old man caught his breath between draws. "He's in there, doing a fine job. You a fan of his or something?" "I'm just a friend, and I wanted to come down and hear Oscar Holden. I'm a fan of Oscar's." "Me too," Keiko added, getting swept up in the moment, crowding close to Henry. The old man stubbed his cigarette out on the worn heel of his shoe, then tossed the butt in the nearest garbage can. "You a fan of Oscar's, huh?" He pointed at Henry's button. "Oscar got an all-Chinese fan club these days?" Henry covered the button with his coat. "This is just my father's—" "It's okay, kid. Some days I wish I was Chinese, too." The old man laughed a gravelly smoker's laugh that trailed into a cough, wheezing and spitting on the ground. "Well, if you're friends of Sheldon the sax man and Oscar the piano man, I figure Oscar probably wouldn't mind having a couple little kids from the fan club in his house tonight. Now you won't tell no one about this, will you?" Henry looked at Keiko, unsure if the old man was kidding or not. She just kept smiling. Her eager grin was larger than his. Both shook their heads no. "We won't tell a soul," Keiko promised. "Great. I need you two fan club kids to do me a little favor if you want admittance to the club tonight." Henry deflated a bit as he watched the old man take some slips of paper out of his shirt pocket. handing one to each of them. He compared his note with Keiko's. They were almost identical, some kind of scribbled writing and a signature, from a doctor. Now you take these to the pharmacy on Weller, you tell him it's on our account, you bring it back, and you get in. I don't think I understand, Henry said. This is medicine? It's a prescription for Jamaican ginger, a secret ingredient around here. This is how the world works, son. With the war, everything's being rationed. Sugar, gasoline, tires, booze. Plus, they don't let us have a liquor license in the colored clubs, so we do what they did a few years back during the Prohibition. We make it and shake it, baby. The old black man pointed to a neon sign of a martini tumbler that hung above the doorway. For medical purposes, you all know. Go on now. Henry looked at Keiko, not sure what to do or what to believe. It didn't seem like that big a request. He must have gone to the drugstore 100 times for his mother. Besides, Henry loved to snack on dried ginger. Maybe this was something like that. We'll be right back. Keiko tugged at Henry's coat, leading him back out the alley and around to Jackson Street. Weller was 1 block over. Does this make us bootleggers? Henry asked, when he saw the rows of bottles through the drugstore window. He was both nervous and excited at the prospect. He'd listened to This Is Your FBI on the radio as G-men busted up smuggling rings coming down from Canada. You rooted for the good guys, but when you played cops and robbers outside the next day, you always wanted to be the bad guy. I don't think so. It's not illegal anymore. Besides, we're just running errands. Like he said, they sell it, but they can't buy from the white places, so they make it. Henry gave up any concern about wrongdoing and headed into the Owl drugstore, which conveniently stayed open until 8. Bootleggers don't go to pharmacies, he told himself. You can't go to jail for picking up an order, can you? If the skinny old druggist thought it was odd for 2 little Asian kids each to be picking up a bottle that was 80% alcohol, he didn't say a word. Truth be told, by the way he squinted at the prescriptions and labels with an enormous handheld magnifying glass, he probably didn't even see much of anything. But the clerk, a young black man, just winked and flashed them a knowing smile as he slipped their bottles into separate bags. No charge, he said. On their way out, Henry and Keiko didn't even pause to moon over the jars of penny candy. Instead, they looked at each other in mock nonchalance, each feeling a little bit older, striding across the street with 10-ounce bottles of liquor swinging at their sides. Small victors in a grown-up scavenger hunt. What did they do with this stuff? Drink it? Henry asked, looking at his bottle. My papa told me how people used to use it to make bathtub gin. Henry pictured the sailors who were known to stagger down the street and cause fights late at night, stumbling around like their legs belonged to someone else. Jack-legged, people called it, from bad gin. Sailors and soldiers from Payne Army Airfield were banned from certain uptown clubs for fighting, so they wandered into the jazz alleys of South Jackson, or even into Chinatown on occasion, looking for a bar that would serve them. Henry couldn't believe people still drank this stuff. But when he saw the crowds that gathered outside the Black Elks Club, he knew they were here for the same thing he was. They were here to partake of something lush, intoxicating, and almost forbidden. They were here for the music. And tonight, at the front of the building, were latecomers lined up to get in. Some were even being turned away. A huge crowd for a weeknight. Oscar sure packed them in. In the alley behind the club, Henry could hear musicians tuning up for their next set. He thought he heard Sheldon tweaking his saxophone. On the back step, a younger man dressed in a white apron and black bow tie was waiting for them. He opened the screen door and rushed them through a makeshift service kitchen, where they put their bottles of Jamaican ginger in a tub of ice with other odd-shaped bottles of mysterious properties. Out in the main room, near a worn wooden dance floor. Their escort pointed at some chairs beside the kitchen door, next to where a busboy was folding a pile of cloth napkins into perfect little white triangles. "You sit over there and stay out of trouble, and I'll go see if Oscar is ready," he told them. Henry and Keiko gazed in awe through the dark, smoky lounge, speckled with tall glasses on burgundy tablecloths, and jewelry that sparkled on the patrons huddled around the small, candlelit tables. The chatter dimmed as an old man found his way to the bar, where he poured himself a tall glass of ice water, wiping the sweat from his brow.